Hi, I'm Steve Rappaport, the Knowledge Solutions Director for the Advertising Research Foundation and the author of a new book on listening called Listen First, Turning Social Media Conversations into Business Advantage, which will be published next month, April, by John Wiley and Sons. Listen First was developed at the ARF to answer 4 questions that our members have. What is listening? How is it done? How is it used? And where is it going? In today's talk, I'd like to lay out how we look at listening. I'd like to talk about the strategic value that listening can provide for companies, and then take you through some cases to give examples and illustrations of how listening can be used to create business advantage. So many people think of listening as listening to online conversations. We take a more inclusive view, and that is that we look at listening first as the study of naturally occurring signals. Because what we're looking to do is calibrate or harmonize our brands and companies with the business environment that we're all part of and that influences us and our behavior as well as our customers. These signals come from 3 areas: conversations, behaviors, and biometrics. Now, behaviors can be captured through trend information and such, because behaviors really are, or trends really are, ways of listening to behavior in a large way. And biometrics, these are the silent signals. These are the signals that we give ourselves and we also give each other through the expression of emotions. Another important aspect of our definition is that listening may or may not be guided. Now, some people argue that it's unprompted. We found that in the ways that listening is done, especially if you consider online communities and so forth, is that there is value to guiding responses and interactions. However, so long as they're not coerced or forcing people to make choices between things that are not natural to them. And last, the role of all of this is to bring the voice of people's lives into the brand, and we'll see the reason for that in just a minute. I'm going to go to the next slide. So listening is what people say, do, and feel. To understand listening, we need to be interdisciplinary. We also need to understand emotions, mindsets, cultures, and also we need to be concerned not only with the online sources, but offline sources and non-conversation sources as well. So, so I mentioned the word harmonize or calibrate, and this graphic shows the reason why. On the left is the way the business used to be conducted, shall we say, or thought of, where companies were essentially monarchies. They were closed systems. They had their product. They decided to sell it, and the role of research was to determine to whom and how much. The whole idea was for efficiency and market share. On the right, this describes more of the world that we inhabit today, where companies realize that they're not monarchies, but they're actually democracies, working with other companies as well as customers, and being influenced by external events. And so here, the responsibility of management is not so much just to make and sell, but to sense and respond to competition and to their customer. So it's really important to have then signals that come in from the business environment that can be brought in and acted upon and interpreted rapidly. And in fact, today, this is the source of business advantage. Another cut at looking at this is, we have these 2 companies that we just described, the closed system, which makes and sell, the open system for sensing and responding. And we can also take a look at customers and view them 2 ways. One is a rational customer, where each customer has a very clear purpose as to what they're interested in and what they want to buy. And the social customer, who has criteria, but is also making them based on value choices. So what's important and meaningful to them? So if we look at the way that companies market, we can create a kind of grid matrix, and we can see that there's differences. One is, if you've got a closed system and a rational customer, really it's all about efficiency. But if you're looking to make and sell and your customer is looking to make choices based upon what they really like and how they see themselves, it's really about maximizing the fit of the brand with their lifestyle. It's a different kind of marketing approach. Now, if we move to the right and we see an open system and a rational customer, here the company is using all of its capabilities to bring the best products forward or brands forward, and they're presenting the customer with what we can think of as optimum choices. We've used to the best of our ability, we've used our resources to bring you what we think is best for you. Now, your job is essentially to make the optimum choice. But when you've got an open system and a social customer, now the game has really changed. Now it's really about co-creation or engagement. It's about companies and customers interacting with one another and making themselves known to one another so that the company can use its resources in the best way to address the needs, interests, and concerns of their customers. So having this signaling that listening provides is a way that companies today are gaining competitive advantage. And so it's really about the ability to capture, interpret, and act upon signals from rich and dynamic data, which includes conversations. It's that companies with signal advantage are rethinking their approach, and they're shifting from knowing and optimizing, which is what was done in the make and sell era, to learning and adapting. An advantage, therefore, is accruing to companies that can process this. They can focus on the right information, extract the signals, process them rapidly, and harmonize their organization's behavior, and do so continuously. So that is really the rationale for listening from the standpoint of business strategy. Right now, I just want to touch on the ways in which listening is used to help companies, harmonize, but also to achieve marketing objectives. When you take a look at this list, right, what should really stand out is that these are the kinds of marketing objectives that all companies want to achieve at some point or another. And listening, so the point here is that listening is used not for specific or new or different marketing objectives, but to support the kinds of business objectives, as I said, that we've all been looking to accomplish, such as understanding consumer mindsets, discovering customers, managing reputation, sharpening messaging, improving products. All of this can be done through listening. What listening does is it provides another way of getting information that can be brought into a company, that can be interpreted, acted upon. When we cut it another way, then we can see that the tasks that listening performs, the research tasks, are also very familiar and very similar to what we've always done. Listening just provides another way to do that. And so some of the tasks that we've seen listening perform, and these are all outlined in Listen First, such things as profiling new customers, detecting market shifts, segmenting customers, analyzing competitors, detecting problems, testing concepts, co-creating products. All of these research tasks can be performed with listening, but listening provides another way to do it, a different sort of data. So now let's move to a few cases where listening data has been used to create business advantage. The first one we'll start with is a motorcycle, the Suzuki Hayabusa. This is a motorcycle that's marketed around the world. This is the case that I'll be talking about is the American case. The Hayabusa is the fastest production bike made in the world. Every year it gets a little faster. There's a bigger engine and it's a little lighter. And it has a very strong, dominant racing heritage. It wins all the all the Grand Prix of racing, and it's one of the most decorated bikes in the world. So for years, Suzuki thought that their market for this bike was just as you see here. You know, somebody really interested in racing, performance, and all of that. In 2008, when they came out with a slightly revised model, they looked at their first month sales, and they actually were quite surprised. So what they found was that most of their, or a good chunk of their customers, were not the customers they thought they had. In fact, they had an urban market that they really knew nothing about. It was a big surprise to them. And so, and this picture here shows you very different from the racing heritage, totally customized, modded, personalized bike for really a much more urban, kind of hip hop lifestyle. So they said, wow, this is very, very interesting. We need to learn more about this. And so they took that clue from the trend, which is behavioral listening, to doing more social listening, and then incorporated that with other forms of research that are commonly used, such as ethnographic and observational research, trend analysis, industry data, and primary research to dimensionalize things. And they came up with a campaign that really focused on the urban customer that they called Busa Beats. I can show you a little bit from that. Busa Beats was a way for Suzuki to involve their urban customers into a music competition. And so what they did is they had major DJs and beat makers create beats that went onto a website. People could download these beats, create songs over them, and then there was a competition for the songs. That started in 2008, and each year it's still going on, and it changes focus and complexion some, but the whole idea is to really make it engaging, not only through this competition, but then they go into local markets, they have events, and so forth. So it started in 2008. It's engaged the audience quite well, and it's really become the focus of their marketing campaign. And that whole racing heritage has gone away, as listening really led Suzuki to discover a new market, and then treat it as primary market, and then continue to evolve a relationship over time. It's a very effective and powerful campaign, all started through listening. Another type of listening that's done is for competitive analysis. So this is an example of 4 mobile phone carriers: AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, and Verizon. And I use this example because what this research did is, using comments and analyzing conversations, it then identified the themes that people talk about, and then was able to put percentage numbers around those themes. And so this would be very similar to doing a traditional survey work. But the difference is that all of the conversation topics emerged from the conversation. They weren't imposed or preordained by the researchers. And here you can see how the different companies stack up, and that Verizon, of all the companies, is the clear winner. And when you look at this, you can see why. One is that Verizon is praised more than the others for the quality of its network and its phones. And if you look at the positive versus the negatives, the way that people talk about Verizon's network, for example, is, there's almost twice as many positives as negatives. And the same goes for the phones, where for the other companies, that's not the case. And so what this kind of listening research enabled Verizon to do is see not only how they stack up against their competitors, where their points of difference are, and then they could take that and drive that home in their messaging. And for those of us who are familiar with Verizon's advertising, those are the two things that they emphasize: the quality of the network and the capability of their phones. The last case that I'll talk about is using listening for content development, because as we all know, marketing content, providing content has become a marketing strategy for many companies. The example I'm using here is a Meredith website called Mixing Bowl. To develop it, Meredith consulted its private community that's run by a company called Communispace. It's called Real Women Talking, to test ideas and to understand the types of content that would be of great interest to them. What they learned was that people wanted recipes, but not just, here's one about turkey and here's one about eggplant, but they wanted to see the recipes in the context of family, holiday, entertaining, and so forth. They didn't want to see it separate from daily life, or just here's a recipe and here's another recipe. They wanted to have meaning. The second is that they wanted to exchange and interact with women around recipes, so social networking features became important. But also, because this is a commercial site, they wanted to know if women were receptive to sponsored recipes and discussion from advertisers. And in fact, they were. Because what they discovered was that women were quite comfortable knowing that the recipe came from Campbell's or another major food company. And this was, of course, music to Meredith's ears, because it meant that they would have a way to monetize the site and generate revenue. They also wanted frequent updates. And here what's important is updates of the site. But when you're managing content, you want to know what is it that people have long-term or enduring interest in, and also what are the new topics that they're interested in. So when it comes to listening, it was a very important insight, because sometimes people who are doing listening saying, well, you just listen for what's new. Well, in fact, it's very important to listen to what's the same, because what's the same is an indication of enduring interest that if you're writing content for, you want to know that you're making sure that you're meeting your audience's interest for what they're interested for, content that they're looking for, as well as the new things that come along. And so with that, I'll conclude the presentation, and I'll engage in a question and answer question and answer session with our host, Ray Pointer.